Welcome back. It's been a while, and today I'm going to be talking about something that has stirred a little bit of controversy on the internet. So, a couple of weeks ago, I posted a carousel that got a lot of people talking, per usual. And I know that it circulated the internet, group chats, Facebook groups, and a lot of offline conversations were had about it. So, I kind of wanted to dive deeper into the topic. And I wanted to talk about personal branding. Is it a double-edged sword for entrepreneurs? Because the truth of the matter is that the entrepreneurial ecosystem is kind of broken. Fatigue is robbing founders, especially founders of color, from the opportunity to build long-standing legacy businesses. And two big contributing factors, in my opinion, is one, the fact that founders do not have the capital to hire the teams that they need. And because they don't have the capital to grow their teams, they have to become the face of their business, and they have to use personal branding as a marketing strategy. Now, I don't know about you, I don't like to be on the internet streets, okay? I want to be in my house, in my bonnet, with no makeup on, not making any reels, not being consistent, and actually doing the work of a founder and of a CEO. So as we start to kind of navigate this discussion, I don't want the underlying reason why I made the post to get lost, and that is that the mental health of founders and entrepreneurs is impacted when they are forced to be people that they are not, when they are forced to have to show up online for the sake of marketing their business when that's not their true nature. Now, if you're somebody who loves to be on Instagram, if you are naturally extroverted, if you're naturally charismatic, if you love the camera, you love content creation, I'm not talking to you. I'm talking about the founders who it goes against their natural abilities, their natural way of operating to be constantly in front of the camera, and they kind of feel shackled to content creation because that's just the way that marketing has evolved, and that's what they have heard from their mentors or their coach or other entrepreneurs, that it's the way to grow. And to ignore the impact of content creation and the internet and personal branding on founders is really, really negligent, in my opinion. So I really want to talk about, one, how did we get here? And two, what can we do to fix it? How can we develop different ways to evolve as business owners to level up our marketing so that we're not feeling like we're constantly tethered to being in front of a camera? So many conversations have been had, and I want to clear something up real quick. I do not have a dog in the fight. I am not a personal branding coach. I am not an infopreneur. So all of my clients, they come from referrals, and I'm not on the internet streets being consistent. So I may seem like I have a bias because I don't directly benefit or profit from the personal branding landscape as it currently exists. So I understand that this viewpoint might feel like an attack on personal branding or coaching. It ain't. And I'm going to dive into that later on. But what's important to understand is that we cannot continue to paint personal branding as the saving grace for entrepreneurs. It ain't. Okay? It's not. And you know why it's not? Because not everybody has the same personality. Not everybody has public speaking skills. Not everybody has creativity. Some people were not made to be the face of their business. So while it may work for Susie, it's not going to work for Lillian. Okay, while you saw entrepreneur A be able to grow and scale their business on TikTok by making videos every day, you might try to replicate that formula and it might not work for you. So we need to stop positioning personal branding as like the free go-to marketing strategy for entrepreneurs who want to grow their business, because it's a little bit self-serving when the reason that you're promoting personal branding as a saving grace is because you have a personal branding course, or you teach personal branding online, or you're benefiting from positioning personal branding as a tool in some way. Not to say that there aren't founders who, got to make their money. But again, I want to make sure that we're not generalizing and making personal branding the end-all, be-all, number one marketing strategy, because it ain't. It's just one in a big, big toolbox of many strategies. I said what I said. So one of the big things that had me thinking about this, and the reason why I made that post, was because I was noticing that there were so many founders that were quitting their businesses. I felt like there was like a 2-week period at the top of the summer, end of spring, where it's like everybody was just like over their business. They were making announcements, they were making posts, how they're tired, how they're burnt out, and how they just wanted to like do something new. And I'm no stranger to the ebbs and flows of business, right? I'm no stranger to the fact that some days you wake up and you really want to throw it all away. But what I was finding as a common thread and as a common theme in all of this was that people weren't necessarily throwing their businesses away because they didn't want to be entrepreneurs. They were throwing their businesses away because the way that they were running their businesses were no longer serving them, or they were just simply burnt out and turned off by having to perform in the social media rat race. So I know that I'm technically criticizing the internet industry, and that's a little bit bold, but I just can't continue to stand by and see entrepreneurs throw away years and years of business, years of traction, years of customer growth just because they're tired and because they don't hear anything different. They start to feel like there's something wrong with me. I'm not a good enough entrepreneur. I'm not built for this. I'm not made for this. And that's not necessarily the case. We are trapped in a system that does not set up founders of color to win, period. We're underfunded and we're understaffed, so it's really hard to scale when you're a one-person team trying to do it all, right? You're trying to be a CEO, you're trying to deliver services, you're shipping out your own products, you're making labels, you're making Instagram reels, you're trying to figure out how to run ads, you're doing all of these things, and of course you feel like you are stuck in a blender because your mind is all over the place all of the time. On top of that, the algorithm doesn't help, right? So not only are you overextended doing 5,000 million things, then you're not even seeing the results that you would expect to get from doing all of them things. I too will be like, fuck all this, okay? I too will be like, I'm finna go and I'm gonna go get a job or I'm gonna find something else because this isn't for me. But I really want us to be able to get to a place where we have these conversations of exhaustion, we have these conversations of overwhelm more publicly and not in private, because if we continue to keep all of the stress associated with being a founder and being an entrepreneur in the dark, we're never going to see the end of the tunnel. We're never going to be able to figure out what the solutions are and start to see real change, because everyone's feeling all of this shame around why their business isn't working or why they, as a founder, aren't producing the results that they thought that they would. And the fact is, I really think like we just deserve generational wealth. You know, we just deserve to have businesses that are in our families for years and decades, and it's passed down. And it's really hard to do that when, one, you're the face of your business, so the success of your business is contingent upon you showing up. So the moment that you die, that you get sick, it's a wrap, right? But it's also really hard to have a legacy business when we're quitting them every other year because we're burnt out. So all of that traction that we've developed is now out the window, and we have to start again from scratch. When our counterparts are third generation entrepreneurs and their granddaddy started a business, you know, back in the 40s, 50s, and now they may not be operating the business, but they are definitely getting some payouts from that business. And for people of color, that's not something that we often see. So I really want to get to the root of mental health and entrepreneurship in this episode, because I really want us to kind of look at how we are running our businesses differently, so that 10 years from now, 20 years from now, we are building businesses that are not only generating cash flow for us, but that can generate cash flow for our children, for our grandchildren, and beyond. So before we dive into the meat of the episode, I have to kind of like set some things up into context. So the word personal branding, or the phrase personal branding, is often used to describe multiple different things. And personal branding is really how you want to be known in the marketplace, how you want to essentially brand yourself in the marketplace. You can do this as an entrepreneur, you can do this as an employee. You can do this as just a regular everyday person. You have a personal brand in your friend group. You got the friend that's throwing ass. You got the friend that's gonna make you drink Don Julio at 7 a.m. on vacation. You have the responsible friend. You have the friend that plans the trips. You have the friend that's constantly overdressed. You have the friend that's constantly late. That's a personal brand. That's a reputation that you have in your personal life. You have a reputation at your job. You have a reputation online, on the internet, in business. So we often take that idea of personal branding and then we translate it into other things. So personal branding as reputation is one thing, but personal branding as a marketing strategy is something else. So now we're taking the concept of developing your reputation and using your reputation to market a business. So for example, let's say that I have a hair care business. I'm going to take my personal brand and now I'm going to start creating hair tutorials. Or I have a makeup business, so now my whole entire Instagram page is makeup tutorials. Or let's say that I own a restaurant. Now I'm using my personal brand and I'm publishing all the recipes on my personal page. What happens when you do that is the business gets tied to you, the person, and it doesn't learn how to stand on its own. How many people who are watching this or listening to this episode have two business pages? You have your personal page and you have your business page, and it's crickets on your business page. It's dry. Ain't nothing going on over there. Ain't no comments, nothing. Because all of the activity is on your personal page. Why? Because people have gotten used to the fact that you're constantly going to show up as a representative and as a spokesperson for your business, right? Now, what happens then? The moment that you stop showing up as the spokesperson and the representative for your business, your leads dry up, your contacts dry up, you're not making no money, you broke. The moment you want to go on vacation, it's a wrap. Your cash flow is also on vacation. The moment you have somebody passes away or you have a crisis, your bank account is now in crisis too. So if we start to think about what we're sacrificing when we build our business on the backs of our personal brands, we realize that we're really, one, risking a lot of money, and two, we're also putting in jeopardy our livelihood because we do not have the opportunity to get tired. We do not have the opportunity to get sick. We do not have the opportunity to have a bad day because we always have to be on and we always have to be performing. And I don't know about you, but life be lifing, and I've been needing a break. And every time that I get off social media, if I stopped making money, I will be on the pole. I would literally have to be at Magic City shaking something because what am I going to do? What am I going to do? At the end of every single year, I always, usually like around Thanksgiving, I always get off Instagram and I usually don't come back till like January. So I take about, 6-7 weeks off of the internet. And if every January when I got back online, I had to start from zero with no clients, with no revenue, it would be hard times. And when I see the entrepreneurs who can't take that time off, who can't breathe, it really, really hurts my heart because I know that there's another way. So I don't want you to just think about personal branding as one, a reputation builder, and two, as a marketing strategy. A lot of people also use personal branding as a business model. This is folks who use personal branding for coaching. They use personal branding to get speaking engagements. They use personal branding to get consulting. Again, when you listen to this episode, take it with a grain of salt because I understand that you are selling you, right? When you're using personal branding as a business model, you are selling you. You're selling the information that's in your head. You're selling your expertise. You're selling the things that you know and can do for other people. So it's going to require you, of course, to show up, right? Now, there are ways around it. When we think about people like Tony Robbins or Oprah or Gary Vee, those people are using their personal brand, their image and likeness as a business model. However, they have capital, and with capital comes resources, and with resources comes peace. So a lot of us have to stand in this gap where we might have a personal branding business model that's requiring us to show up, but we don't necessarily have the capital or the team to be able to take a lot of those things off of our plates. So for example, today, I'm recording the podcast in a studio. I have a videographer. I had the podcast produced. I'm going to have post-production done. All I had to do was come and show up. Now, if I had to come, show up, if I had to buy a camera, set up the lights, do the editing, baby girl, you ain't getting an episode. You're not. And as you will see, the last time I published an episode was a long time ago. Why? Because podcasting was an expensive ass hobby. It costs money. It costs a lot of money to produce an episode and not have it sponsored. And I don't use my podcast as a lead generation like other folks. I don't use this podcast to necessarily get clients. I use this podcast to talk about topics that are important to me. So it became a very, very big expense. And as I started to think about, okay, what are the things that are going to allow me to show up and operate in my zone of genius and to the best of my ability, I needed to get my money up and be able to hire the experts to do the things. This video, crisp, okay? Porter is back there making sure that I'm looking good, okay? If the sun is not hitting right, he's gonna stop this video, he's gonna get me together. If the audio is acting up, he's gonna get me together, right? I don't have to try to be all the things in my business, but I had to get to a point where I had the income, where I had the capital to be able to invest into something like this. So I'm not saying that having a personal brand and using that as a business model is negative, but what I'm saying is when we don't have the capital to be able to put the pieces in place to support us, it can get very draining and very time consuming, leading us to what? Want to throw our business away. A hard reality of building a personal brand also contributes to fatigue when we start to feel like our business and our identities become intertwined. So when you have a personal brand, you are your brand. Oftentimes, you become the face, the customer service, the everything of your business. You go to events and people talk to you. You might have hired an assistant. They don't want to talk to the assistant. They want to talk to you. You are fielding customer service requests in your DMs, even though you have a business page, because all of the content is being produced and created on your page by you. But then what starts to happen, which I've experienced, and one of the reasons why I ended up taking a break in business around 2018, was that people started to get very intertwined with my personal life, and I had a very hard time separating my personal life from my business. So the more that I tried to climb the entrepreneurial ladder, if you will, or the more that I tried to like climb my career, people started to be consumed with my dog, my relationship, what I was wearing, where I was going, what I was eating, and it started to become less about business, which was why I was on the internet, and too much about my personal life, right? I'm not an influencer. I'm not, a blogger. My business model is not making money from my lifestyle. My business model is making money from a service. So when I started to see comments and people criticizing what I was doing or what I was saying or like how I was doing certain things in my personal life, I was absolutely 1000% turned off. The moment that I was like, oh, I'm done with personal branding was, I remember like it was literally yesterday. I'm never going to forget this day. I was Googling my name because I was trying to find an article that had been written about me. I was like putting together my media kit and I was trying to get like all of my press clips in one place. And I remember I had Googled, and you know how Google has like auto suggestions or has like, what, like you search for one thing and then it tells you like other specific things that you might have searched. I'm never gonna forget, I was like Googling like Emily De La Cruz, like Business Insider or something like that. And all of the suggested things were like, Emily De La Cruz married, Emily De La Cruz fiance, where does Emily De La Cruz live, how old is Emily De La Cruz? And I was like, why do y'all care? Why is it that serious? Like, why is it ever that deep? And then I became highly, highly private. That's why I hid a whole pregnancy from y'all until my baby was 6 months. Because you bitches is crazy. A lot of y'all. Okay? And I needed to protect my peace and I needed to protect my privacy. And I just wasn't willing to let those boundaries keep being crossed. And again, me putting my personal life and my personal brand on display for everybody to see, I basically allowed people to then have something to comment on and criticize. And I was like, I already have like issues with self-esteem. I don't want to say self-esteem because I be feeling myself, but more like self-worth. Like oftentimes I'm not the person that's like, I'm the shit. I'm so good at what I do. Like I really need a lot of affirmation. And a lot of my friends will tell you that I always am downplaying everything that I do. But after seeing that, I was really hurt that grown women on the internet had time to create accounts, go on this website and talk shit about me when it's like, all I ever tried to do was help people. All I ever tried to do was just share my opinions, share my my expertise, and just like help people grow online. And when I felt like people came back and bit me in the ass with that, I was like, never again, never again. So that really, really took a toll on my identity, because I had to figure out, who am I outside of being an entrepreneur, and can those two people coexist separately? And I was so afraid, because I was like, well, if I remove all of my business and personal branding type of content from my social media page, like, what's going to be left? Am I going to be enough? Am I going to be valuable to people if I'm not constantly talking about business, if I'm not constantly, giving them game, giving them gems, giving them value? And I quickly started to realize that all of the relationships around me started to change when I made the decision to stop using my personal brand to market. When I stopped using my personal brand as my business model, and I just let my personal brand exist so that people understand my reputation, but not so that it would grow my customer base. My work grows my customer base. I do good work, I get referrals, I get more clients. And I started noticing that a lot of my friends at the time, like, all they wanted to do was talk to me about business. We didn't have a emotional connection. We didn't have a true friendship built on camaraderie. We only had friendships that were built on business. And when I decided that I didn't want to be that girl anymore, it really, really changed the people that were around me. It changed how I saw myself, and it really changed how I operated online. So this is one thing that I don't want to be ignored, because oftentimes when people leave a comment on our Instagram or have something to say about every little thing that we do, it feels like it could be a personal attack. And I don't think that people always have that intention, but people are going to say what they want to say, okay? You could go online with literally the best idea in the world, and people are going to find the roach that's in the back. They're going to find the pot that you didn't clean. They're going to find the one gray hair that you didn't cover. They're going to find one wrinkle. They're going to always find something. That's really, really, really hard, especially if you don't have the thickest of skin. So I also want us to consider how our mental health is being impacted when we are giving so much of ourselves online and really getting nothing in return, okay? And the last piece that I really want to make sure that we discuss and talk about is the fact that generational wealth and assets are so important. And the closer and closer that we get to financial freedom as founders of color, the more trapped that we often feel. We start in a place where we have to be the face of our businesses out of necessity. But then as time goes on and as things evolve, we don't necessarily see a way out. We don't necessarily see it as a temporary solution to a current problem. We think about it as like the permanent way that we need to operate. And that's not always the case. I want us to think about, how can we start to develop systems? How can we start to develop processes? How can we start to develop ways where we disconnect ourselves from our business, not only identity-wise, but also operations-wise? The quicker that we start to do these things, the quicker that we start to think about these things, the better that our businesses are for success, for acquisition, but the better that we are mentally and emotionally when we do not have all of these things on our plate. Again, I absolutely understand that you have to have money, resources, capital, team, all of these things to make them happen. But when you start planning for a team, when you start building out systems for people to start taking things off of your plate, when you start to become an expert at leadership and delegation, even when you're a one-person team, you start to think like a CEO with a team. It's so much easier when the money does catch up for you to be able to delegate things, because I know so many entrepreneurs that have a ton of money and they still can't delegate because they didn't build their systems in a way that's easy to plug other people in. They built their whole entire business around them. So when other people try to come in and help and take things over, it's impossible. They don't got passwords, they don't have SOPs, they don't have anything documented, and it just really becomes chaos for the person that's trying to help, and then it becomes even more chaotic for the entrepreneur who's trying to figure out, how can I take the last 5 years of how I've been running my business and operationalize that for somebody else to take over? So what happens? never mind, forget it. I'm just going to do it myself. I don't need to hire nobody. I don't need nobody. I'm just going to figure it out. And then we stay on that hamster wheel of doing it all ourselves. So one thing that I want you to walk away from this episode thinking about is, what is it that's contributing most to your fatigue? What is the thing that is exhausting you the most? Is it constantly having to show up online? Is it your identity being intertwined with your business so you start to feel a certain way when things aren't going your way? I'll give you an example. Let's say that you did a launch, or let's say that you had a revenue goal and you didn't hit the revenue goal. Instead of saying, this launch, or I didn't hit this revenue goal because I didn't do these things, you think, I didn't hit this revenue goal because I am X, because I did Y, right? So my business isn't growing because I am not the best public speaker, or, I'm not getting clients because I'm not good at sales, or I'm not, scaling my business because I'm disorganized, right? Those things can be true, but you cannot always base the wins and the losses of your business on just you and your identity and who you are. You have to think about, what are all of the objective things that can be leveraged so that you can grow your business. You always want to think about your business as different levers that you can pull, right? And when everything is tied to your identity and everything is tied to how you feel and your mood, right, that is going to reflect in your business. When you're not feeling something, you showing up on Reels with an attitude, you showing up on live cursing people out, the link is in the bio, y'all don't know how to read. No, ho, you don't know how to communicate. If you knew how to communicate and your clients knew where to find the link in the bio, they wouldn't be asking you in the comments every day, right? Maybe there's something that you need to change. Maybe there's something that you need to do. Maybe there's something that you need to update. But we constantly get so defensive and we're constantly so overstimulated running our businesses that we tend to lash out. We have an attitude. We're overwhelmed. We feel like everybody's getting on our nerves, when really it's just like we have too much on our plate. And any little thing is going to trigger us. So that's why I want you to think about, what is causing you the most fatigue in your business? What is triggering you the most? Because that's the first thing that you got to get off of your plate immediately. Immediately. We have so many AI tools now. Half of the things that you will be paying a person hundreds of dollars to do, you could probably do it with a $20 subscription to somebody's tool.
Are you an entrepreneur trying to figure out marketing, and you and ChatGPT cannot get on the same page with the outputs? Skip the prompts. Try Copy Hero AI, a suite of AI-powered marketing tools for small businesses. You can easily develop effective marketing strategies and campaigns, outline your podcast, develop a course curriculum, or even generate a lead magnet without needing to be a marketing expert. Marketing is fast-paced, and you don't need to feel like you're struggling to keep up. Head over to our show notes to get our exclusive link to create an account and start generating your marketing in one click. No credit card required.
So let's make a list and think about, what are all the things that are causing me the most fatigue? What are the things that are impacting my mental health the most? What are the parts of my identity that are super duper intertwined in my business? What are my limiting beliefs? What am I thinking about myself when it comes to entrepreneurship? I'm not good at this. I'm not good at that. In order for me to grow my business, I need to have a whole bunch of money. If I was prettier, I would get more views on Instagram. If I was a better speaker, more people would listen to my podcast. If I had a rich NFL boyfriend, I would be able to buy more inventory. Whatever it is, we all have these thoughts in our head that we don't want to say out loud because they sound insane. But those are the very thoughts that we need to say out loud, and we need to put to paper so that we can really come face to face with them, assess them, and realize, are they true? Is it something that I can do about it? Is it something that I can change? And if it's not true, if it's not something that you can necessarily change, it's not something worth spending energy on, right? I can't change the fact that I'm from New York, that I have an accent. We're just gonna have to work with that. We just have to work with that. I need to figure out how to build my business around who I am as a person, but also figure out how to build the systems that allow other people to shine where I am weak. But if I continue to move forward with the idea that I have to do everything myself, that I have to be responsible for turning all of my weaknesses into strengths, I'm going to constantly be exhausted trying to figure out how to be something that I'm not. I don't like showing up on Instagram. If I built a business that required me to show up on Instagram every single day, I would have no business. So again, I had to figure out what are the systems, what are the ways, what are the different marketing strategies that I could use, that I can leverage in order for me to have peace as a founder, but also for my business to still run and get what it needs. Because I need to be a steward of my business. It's my job to drive the boat, to steward the ship down to the shore, but the ship's still gonna need maintenance. We still need gas. We still need some people to come up in here and clean the boat. It's not just getting in there and driving. It's also about all of the other pieces that make the trip or the journey come to life. So systems. I know you're like, okay, Emily, but in theory, that sounds real nice. But like, how are we actually gonna do that? So here are some of the things that I did and that I recommend that you can do in order to start to remove yourself from the day-to-day of a lot of the marketing. Again, I have some founders who are like, I love marketing. I love showing up on Reels. This ain't for you. This is for my sis and my brother who are sick of having to show up online. They would much rather do anything else, like get a root canal, instead of creating a reel. So if this is you, this is for you. So the first thing that I recommend that you start doing is thinking about how are you going to document all of your processes. And the easiest way that I do it is I have a tool called Dialpad, which is kind of like Zoom, except you don't have to like download anything on your computer. And what Dialpad does is it'll record, you can record your screen, but it also simultaneously transcribes the conversation or transcribes the audio as you're talking. So if I'm doing something, for example, let's say that I am writing an email, when I was editing my own podcast episodes, when I was writing carousel posts, for example. As I was doing these things, I would just have my Dialpad open and I would just be recording everything that I was doing on the computer and I would narrate it. So I'm logging into XYZ to edit my podcast. I'm going to upload the episode. Once it's uploaded, I'm going to listen for this. I'm going to review it like this. When I'm reviewing it, I'm actively saying, oh, okay, I see here, I don't like that this was happening. Oh, I'm removing this clip because of this. I'm going to make a note to add something here. So I'm vocalizing everything that's going on in my head so that when I have somebody that's going to edit a podcast for me, they know how I think and they know the things that I'm looking for. If I'm creating copy, right? If I'm writing a carousel, for example, or I'm writing an email, for example. Now with AI, the game done changed. It's so easy to do. But let's say that you have a copywriter on staff that you want to train to learn your voice. Same thing. I would go through my process. So like I will outline whatever the email is supposed to say. I will flesh it out. But as I'm doing it, I'm again narrating it. And as I'm editing it, then I'm saying, okay, I'm going to change this out because I want it to sound more like this. Or this doesn't really sound like me because of this. Or I would say this way. And then I would use that process to show the copywriter. This is how I write and have edited before. Take a stab at the same thing. You're not going to write something new. You're going to get the same assignment, and then we're going to compare what I did with what you did, right? Because oftentimes we'll assign people something new or something different, but then we can't compare apples to apples because it's a totally different assignment. So if I'm writing an email about launching a program or launching a live event, let's say, I'm going to have the copywriter write the same email. And then I'm going to edit that email, again, on video. Hey, I'm editing this because of this. I'm leaving comments. Change this to this. This doesn't sound right because of this. Actually, the pricing for the tickets is incorrect. For future, make sure that you go to this page to get like all the details about whatever, right? So I'm, again, recording that process so that, one, I have the transcript that I can then take and make like documented SOPs, but also the person is getting to look over my shoulder and is able to see why I'm making certain decisions. Oftentimes we correct our staff or we correct our contractors and we tell them what to do or what to change, but we don't tell them why we're asking them to change. And they're not going to be able to think like you if you do not give them insight into your mind, into the way that you think, if you don't document what you have coming up. Another thing that I see people often make, especially with marketing and like when they're the face of their business, is like, well, I have to do the podcast or the reels or whatever. And the reason that you feel like you have to do it is because all the ideas live in your head. You are the only creative person on your team. So your team is constantly waiting for you to record the episode, for you to get in front of the camera, for you to do whatever. Because either A, they don't have the creative skill set to figure out like what to storytell. B, you didn't provide them with a document to say, these are the things that I want to talk about this month, this quarter, this year. So they're at the mercy of you communicating your vision to them. Or C, they actually don't have any capacity for content creation, right? So you're either, again, lacking documentation, you're lacking team, or you're lacking some sort of delegation. So this is really important when you want to start to move some things off of your plate, because you have to be able to think 3, 4, 5 steps ahead of your team and cast that vision for them. If they're a good team, a good solid team, and you're a solid leader, once you cast that vision, they're able to run with it. But the problem is that they don't have any documentation in place that they can look at and follow. In corporate America, one of the biggest things that we do is annual planning, half planning, so for the first 6 months of the year and the last 6 months of the year, and then quarterly planning. So if we know that going into 2024, our focus is to scale to X amount of dollars, what does that look like for the first half? What are we gonna do from January to June, right? What are we gonna do from July to December, okay? We have priorities for that. But then within the quarters, we also know exactly what we wanna do. So let's say that you have a goal to make X amount of dollars in the following year. And you know that the way that you're going to do that is through certain amount of activation, certain amount of sales, etc. We want to break that down into what are we doing in the first half of the year, what are we doing the second half of the year. And the reason why you want to break it down into halves is because you want to have a longer term vision that your team is moving towards. When we work month to month, it gets pretty exhausting because we're moving too quick for our team to be able to plan ahead. If it's September and you're planning for October, it's gonna go by so quick. In October, you're planning for November. In November, you're planning for December, and you're constantly on the hamster wheel. But if you're looking at it saying, okay, I know that the first 6 months of the year, I really wanna focus on growing the audience to more returning visitors. Or if you're a service provider, I really wanna get more clients in this specific revenue stream. Then you know to put together all of your content, all of your strategy around what you're working towards. But when you're working month to month, it's hard to have that vision and hard to tie marketing to revenue because you're all over the place. And once you kind of have broken things down by half, you also can break things down by quarter. So on a quarterly basis, what are you contributing towards your revenue goal? Are you contributing, let's say, 20% of your annual revenue goal in the first quarter? Are you contributing 50% of your annual revenue goal in the fourth quarter because of Black Friday and holiday? You have to think about the ebbs and flows of your business, what makes sense, and what are you talking about to promote the things that make the most sense during those times of the year. So if I know that in January I'm trying to sell new memberships into my coaching community, or in March I'm trying to get more people to purchase X product, in December I can sit down with my team and say, this is what we're doing January, February, and March. We need to create content that's going to tie back to sales for January, February, and March. So let's sit down and think about a rough content calendar for the first quarter of the year, and then we can sit down and schedule a content day where we're gonna knock all that out. Now you have time to create scripts. Now different team members can come in. If you need to hire a content creator to come in and shoot certain videos, shoot certain content for you, they can. But we often feel like we have to do everything because we're the only expert in our business, and that's not always the case. But by documenting and having that vision that your team can run with, it gives them some autonomy and also some accountability to what it is that you want and need as a CEO. And then it also gives them the time and the freedom to develop those things on your behalf and for you to be able to give them feedback. Again, when we're working week to week, nothing would piss me off more when I was in corporate where a CEO would come to me and be like, Oh my God, we didn't do nothing for Earth Day. Girl, Earth Day is today. You wasn't thinking about Earth Day last week. You wasn't thinking about Earth Day last month. You saw somebody post something about Earth Day on TikTok that went viral, and now we over here making up some bullshit with some plants in the office because you want to talk about Earth Day. No, no. When you plan and when you prepare accordingly, it sets your team up for success. When you're trying to do everything last minute, we pissed off, they pissed off, everybody's pissed off, and now we're just not the most productive team. So it's, again, very, very important to sit down with yourself and figure out what it is that your team needs to be successful and to execute, and also you have time to correct them so that they can continue to get better. If we are constantly working on a one-off basis or on a last-minute basis, it doesn't give you as the CEO time to give your team feedback, so they will never learn your voice. They will never learn how to replicate or duplicate the things that you do because you're moving from task to task to task, and it's not leaving enough time for you to correct and for them to also absorb the information that you're providing when you give feedback. So those are just some examples. There are so many things that you can delegate. There are so many ways that you can get some peace back, get some time back, but it already starts with the documentation, casting that vision, and honestly developing your leadership skills once you have the capital to hire. In the next episode, I'm going to talk more about personal branding, why I regret personal branding, and why I'm really in a space where I'm like shouting marketing from the rooftops, because I really feel like there's just so much that we have at risk and at stake when we continue to do business at the mercy of the social media algorithms. So I look forward to seeing you on the next one. If you have any questions, feel free to reach out to me at Sanity and Success or at Emily Dela Cruz on Instagram. And you can listen to all of our episodes at sanityandsuccess.com.